I was going to say the number of town meeting, but I don't know what number it is. Few housekeeping rules, no smoking or vaping. Please, everybody silence your cell phones. Keep side conversations to a minimum. Before you speak, please be recognized by the moderator. You do not have to come up to the microphone. I'm told that if you speak clearly and distinctly, this microphone will pick you up. But please do speak clearly and distinctly. Does everybody have all residents have their purple card? You will need this to vote. Are you a resident?
I am.
Then you need to go out and get your purple card.
Where are they?
In the front.
I'll give you one, Mary.
Yeah, you check in.
Yes.
Do you have to be a registered voter to be a resident, to vote in the meeting? If you're a resident, but not a registered voter,
You have to be a registered voter.
you have to be registered.
Because it's a continuation of the.
Okay. This question.
That's a good question. I
We never
had never had that question before. Are there anybody here, is there anyone here from out of town that will wish to speak to an article? We need to recognize you first. Can we have a motion to recognize Cheryl?
So moved.
Second. All in favor of allowing Cheryl to speak at some point? And we need 2/3 on that. The motion passes.
I missed it.
Amy, special announcement for you. This microphone will pick things up. You do not have to go to the microphone to talk. You've seen the exits. You know where the exits are. You know the bathrooms are up front. And I believe that's it. Everybody has silenced their cell phone, right? I'm going to say something embarrassing if your cell phone goes off. All right. Yesterday, in the election for selectmen, Darrell Day received 149 votes. Andrea Kushkarian received 204. Stephen Wicks, 146. 131 blanks, 4 write-ins. So Darrell Day and Andrea Kushkarian prevailed. Welcome. The school committee, Amy Guptill received 189 votes. Jessica Hoppy, 75. 54 blanks. Amy Guptill prevails. For sanitary district, Alan Wells, 245, 68 blanks. Alan prevails. Now, Article 3, to see if the town will vote to adopt charter amendments that update the school committee to accurately reflect the formation of a regional school unit. I'm sorry, that was voted on. 277 yes, 24 no, 16 blanks. So while the article did prevail, it was not enough. It has to be 30% of the registered voters in the gubernatorial election, the last gubernatorial election. So while the article, the voters that voted did vote for it, it does not pass.
So what happens?
It goes back to the way it was.
Goes back.
Well, they'll need to make another proposal.
Try again with a higher, hopefully a higher vote count. It still the charter still references school union 74. So it's been,
Which has not existed for over 10 years, yeah.
we need to get it updated. We just need to have a higher vote count.
Article 4, these are the provider agencies. New Hope for Women prevailed, 244 votes. Article 5, Spectrum Generations prevailed, 233 votes. Article 6, Damariscotta Historical Society prevailed, 206 votes. Article 7, Coastal Kids Preschool prevailed, 240 votes. Article 8, Skinawful Library, thank you very much, Skinawful Library, for this beautiful room, prevailed, 238 votes. Article 9, LCTV, thank you very much for your coverage, gentlemen, prevailed, 183 votes. Article 10, Lincoln County YMCA CLC, prevailed, 207 votes. Article 11, Hardy Roots, prevailed 196 votes. Article 12, Veggies to Table, prevailed 221 votes. Article 13, Midcoast Conservancy, prevailed 209 votes. Altogether, there was a 17% turnout in town of registered voters. 17%.
Can I just ask a quick question with these being voted for?
Please address the moderator.
With these being voted for, you just said they all passed, how much does that increase our operating budget?
You have to add them up real quick.
I'd have to add all those up, Amy, and that's,
The,
Come on,
there were 90, that was
you've got the book right in front of you.
I know, but I don't have.
It was just over $90,000.
the provider agencies, about 90.
Okay, thank you.
All right. The budget validation referendum. Approving the regional school unit number 48 budget for the upcoming school year prevailed 245 to 54 votes with 17 blanks. Article 2, do you wish to continue the budget validation referendum process in regional school unit RSU number 48 for an additional 3 years? That question prevailed 201 to 88. We will now move on to the open part of the town meeting. Does everyone have a book? Because I'm not going to read all of them.
Jim, I got a couple of slides before we get into the first article.
You do. We will now receive a presentation from the town manager.
Just a quick, this was following up on my fourth one now technically, but the last couple of years, the request for some more information at town meeting, we haven't come with PowerPoints for the last couple, so just a quick highlight on the screen is some of the things that the board and town accomplished in fiscal year 23-24. They're highlighted in the town reports you have. That's the fiscal year we reported on for that town report. Couple big road projects. The board passed a bicycle safety and accessibility resolution. The two town boards, Newcastle and Damariscotta, are trying to work together in more ways. Housing's a priority that both boards have identified for the towns to try and work on. There's a couple pieces we're trying to work together on. Just a few weeks ago, the two boards met again and talked about the possibility of exploring a joint public works department again. So that's very early in trying to map out cost and understanding how that could work, knowing that it's happened before. A couple other things that was big, the police department was accredited through Maine Law Enforcement Accreditation Program. There's a few, I don't know, Chief, do you remember how many towns in the state have that?
Well, at the time, there were only 12 out of 170 police departments through the state. Now they're up around 30.
So it's a pretty rigorous process to go through and prove that we are meeting, but there's a standard that the state has put out there is here's a model to achieve for a police department. A lot of policies to go through, a lot of training for the staff. So it was a big accomplishment for the department and the chief to have gone through that with his staff. Quick numbers on building permits and plumbing permits. There was over 130 combined permits issued that year. This doesn't include planning board approvals as well. TIF amendments had started during this fiscal year period. Those were approved by the voters. The amendment to the current TIF was approved by the voters just this past year, and then accepted by the state just this year. But that had started in that year. The town warrant's also in there, which you either picked up a copy of, hopefully the report as well. Great photo cover from one of our new staff members. Our code officer had taken that photo in town. And then the other big thing in there that is an honor is the town report gets dedicated every year to somebody. And this year, Darryl will say a few words, but the board is recognizing Patty Whitten for all of the work she's put into this community over the years.
Yeah, this year's dedication was an easy one. We probably would have liked to do multiple years for Patty. Those of you that don't know Patty, for good reason, because she
she's a hard one to pin down, and doesn't like the limelight, but we're putting you out there anyway. So Patty is, we consider an unsung hero in the town. If you look at the history of Damariscotta, genealogy, our cemeteries, that's the lady right there that's made that stuff happen. And you know, you look at our cemeteries that are laid out. I mean, they're the envy of the county, and it's all under Patty's tutelage over here. So her encyclopedic recall of information is, if you ever get a chance to go on a cemetery tour with her, I mean, you just, it would be a week long. It's amazing. We were lucky in the board, you know, about a year ago to go, you know, take a couple Saturdays and do a tour with her. So I can't say enough about her. We put you know, put something together in the report. I'm not going to read it verbatim. Everybody can see it. But if you get a chance to see her on the street, just thank her. And she's done a wonderful job for the town. And sad to say we'd like to keep you on, but she's got some other things she wants. She's been doing this a long time, so we appreciate you, Patty, and have some time to yourself. We might lean on you once in a while. And real quick, we have Josh Pinkham's not here tonight. I think most of you know Josh. There's a list of accomplishments I won't go into tonight because it'll be a big long list, so we will address it another time. But Josh, he's tied up with sports. He wanted to be here tonight under his last town meeting as a select board member, but he's pretty heavy in sports right now and trying to focus on that. So he's done a lot in the last, oh my God, I don't know how many decades now. We can go on and on, but well, you see him too. Just make sure you thank him. So.
He's coaching an undefeated team tonight. So.
Yeah, they supposedly, you might hear some sirens, they were going to have a parade through town, I guess, or something down from Lincoln, so they already do it, yeah, so. Yeah, so, that's, you, Jim, yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Pledge.
I'd like to point out that Josh is now the longest serving selectman in the history of this.
Yeah. The way to get his plaque, he's got he was trying to be the first person that had 2 plaques.
He is the one.
He's the, good job. On the 2, they couldn't fit it all on one, so. He made it.
Perfect. I want to highlight, while we're here, we do have a new website. Some of you may have gotten the mailer last week, or maybe this week, depending on how quick it got to you. Advertising this meeting, yesterday's meeting, but on the back side it had notice of a new website. There was a typo that I missed on that, so it's not Damariscotta, but we changed the domain to .maine.gov, and so we've pulled that away from a .com. It's got a refreshed look. The Agenda Center is new. We will be working a lot better to keep that updated for folks. I know that we've kind of lost track of that in the last few years, so we'll be populating that more regularly. There's new features for forms for us to try and create for folks to access. We have a mass notification which we actually launched last September when the parking lot project kicked off. So if folks haven't gone to the website previously or with the new one yet, you can sign up for notifications, and we have it set up so you can get just traffic alerts if you want, or all general correspondence from the town, or just election information. So we tried to just understand how people what they wanted to receive. But that's a way to reach out via text message, email. If you don't have a cell phone, you can also have it voice over the landline if you choose that option. So it's a good feature for us to be able to offer for folks. There's a C-click fix which we don't have launched yet, but that's going to be a new way for folks to be able to report problems. There'll be a way for folks that do report them and create a profile off the website to see progress. That it won't be left open and without a phone call from me or someone else, and so you'll be able to see, we'll be able to report in on that program, our progress towards fixing that complaint. We just used recently the RFP and employment piece of this is new and looks a little bit different, a little more streamlined for those looking for projects and information on the RFPs. So another new piece, and then the other big one, the requirements to be compliant with Access ADA standards. And so with this new website, we also bought into an accessibility piece that they offer, so people can change depending on what their needs are. The website, either layout or font or contrast, and so it becomes a much more visible website for everybody looking to access it. If anyone does, I know someone's already reached out so far with some comments about either can't find or would be nice if, please send them. This is something that the staff have learned how to update, and we want to keep it fresh and real for everyone to be able to access information. So please reach out to us if there's something that you'd like to see or should be changed. Comp plan update. Michael, our planner, couldn't be here today. He's at a conference. But just quickly, if you're not aware, the town's comprehensive plan did pass a town vote last December. And it went to the state to see if they determined if it was consistent with the Growth Management Act. They did find that it was consistent with the Growth Management Act. There were a couple of things that Michael needs to work on to bring back to the board that may require a quick amendment, but it was all things that we've talked about and within the spirit of what was put together. The next steps for this is to create an implementation committee. The select board is waiting for some information and trying to make sure whoever wants to serve on this has a clear understanding of what the purpose of this group will be. So they're doing some background work just to make sure it's clear what they want the group to work on. But they'll be looking for some people to fill that out in the coming weeks. So keep your eyes open for that if you're interested in that. Helping us get this plan implemented is an Island Fellow through the Island Institutes program. They'll be starting with us in September. We are trying to find some housing if anyone knows of a place to rent in or near town. But that's going to be hopefully a 2-year position with someone's primary focus is to help us get this comp plan off the ground and through some early stage of implementation. So we're really excited about that opportunity with that position. And then the strategic plan, following the comp plan, there's some things in there that aren't included, like operational aspects of what we do every day that need to be taken into consideration, budget impacts that maybe aren't accounted for through the comp plan. There's relative costs associated with those projects, but here we are tonight talking about a budget. So the select board will be working through a strategic planning process to incorporate I think there's almost over 200 strategies that are identified in the comprehensive plan, and so helping them corral some of that, integrate that with what we know we have for staff capacity and budget restraints, and be able to push these things forward so it doesn't just sit around as some saw with maybe the last one or certain portions of the last one. We want to make sure this document moves forward and stays dynamic throughout its tenure. So those are just a few things to look forward to if that is of interest to you. If you're unfamiliar with our budget process, we start in November, typically with a joint meeting between the budget committee and the select board. We talked just briefly typically about some of the things that we're seeing as potential challenges or impacts that we might see coming that would tee up what we're about to start discussing and for the winter for the next year's budget. December and January, the staff start to work on preparing their budget requests. Those come to me, we discuss that. You'll see in some of the budget documents online, the column preserved for the department request, my proposal. That then goes to the select board. They meet jointly with the budget committee to hear those presentations from the department heads. That usually takes place through February. And then during March, typically those two groups split apart and meet separately. The select board, per the charter, actually recommends to the budget committee a number, and then the budget committee considers that. On your warrant articles, you'll see those recommendations, and you'll have the opportunity to determine what sum you'd like to put forward for any of those articles. Following town meeting, our new budget year starts July 1, and we start over again just a few months after that. So if you were unfamiliar, there are some seats available. You'll see one of the articles tonight for budget committee members. Those are appointed, recommended by the select board and voted on by the town. There are some openings and some vacancies anticipated for next year's process. If anyone's interested or know anyone that might be, have them reach out and the board can appoint them for a year until the next town meeting. With that, is there any questions on the process?
I got a question. I'm sorry, go ahead. I got a question, Andy. You mentioned this joint highway department between the two towns. How do you plan to implement that? And how do you plan to fund it?
So if we can, I don't want to push it aside and not answer it, but it's not something I've presented or prepared to present tonight the specifics on. The two boards have created a committee to work through a lot of those questions, and that's a big one.
Okay.
But they'll be working on, as a joint committee between the two towns through the summer. with the idea of coming forward in the early fall, hopefully with a presentation of what they're learning and get some thoughts from the community at that point.
Very, very early stages of it, Larry.
Okay, I just want to go on record, it didn't work 15 years ago. I have questions whether it will work today.
Yep, and we're very early stages of it, so it's just, yeah,
I don't see how you're gonna buy equipment to pay for manpower and do this.
like I said, very, very early stages. Those are all valid questions, and that's what we're just looking at all angles of it, so, yeah.
The
good
board's
question.
the board's only met once, and the committee hasn't met yet, but it's been appointed.
Right, yeah. We'll keep you, yeah, any questions, yeah, keep you in the loop, so.
I have a quick question. I know that we're voting on spending, but I have a question about revenue. And the only place I could find revenue was tax, from our property taxes. So I assume there are other sources of revenue, like tickets or something. I don't know, I just wonder if there's an accounting of that somewhere, because there's a big difference between the taxable revenue, what comes in from taxing property, and what the actual budget is, like $1 million? Do we make $1 million in tickets?
No.
Yeah, you'll see it tonight. Article 34 talks about offsetting revenues,
Yes.
as well as Article 35, although it's a small number, and Article 36 as well. So there are some offsetting revenues that you'll be considering tonight. So it's not just from taxation.
I just wondered, okay. I mean,
Folks, I'm gonna have to stop this here. By statute, we can really, this meeting, once we've convened, can really only address the warrant. Next time, we'll do this part be ahead of time, but at this point here, we're gonna move on. We're gonna go to Article 14. These will be up here. I'm not gonna read all these amounts. When we are done, we're gonna ask for a motion, and that motion is going to need to include a dollar amount. Article 14 is to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate for general government. The Select Board and the Budget Committee both recommend $1,186,955. May I have a motion, please?
I move Article 14 with the amount of $1,186,955.
Do we have a second? We have a second. Discussion on the amount of $1,186,955. Hearing none, we'll ask for a vote. All in favor of appropriating for general government the amount of $1,186,955, please raise your card. All opposed? The ayes have it. Article 15, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate for the police department. The Select Board and the Budget Committee both recommend $907,000.
Jim, I'll move Article 15 at 907,000.
$907,000. Thank you. Second. Discussion. Discussion?
Question, yeah.
Yes.
The town manager recommended 5.98%, and the budget committee and the select board came up with 10.19. What's the difference? What did the town manager recommend reduce?
Andy, would you like to answer that?
I can.
You got anything? There was something.
I like the 5.98 better.
Yeah, one big aspect of this, up until I think this current fiscal year, I think, one of the things that's a big sliding number for us in trying to estimate what the budget will be is our health insurance costs, and we have the ability, employees have the ability, if they have other insurance available to them, to have a 25% buyout based on the value of that premium. It's a significant reduction in cost for us, what would otherwise be a 95% cost of that premium. So that's great, but when we're budgeting, we don't necessarily know if those change, if the status of that employee changes, if they need to then be added to the insurance, and so we were budgeting for that full value in case that change happened in any given year. We'd have the money to be able to do that. This, I believe it was this current fiscal year, I had proposed that we pull that back a little bit and estimate it based on what we had going into the year. And we had a reserve account that we created, or was already created, but tried to fund it so that if during any fiscal year that status did change, we could pull it from the reserve and account for it the following fiscal year. When I did that for this year, I didn't account for the HRA, the health reimbursement account that we provide employees. That was set up years ago when they changed the plan option. And that was up to, I believe, $4,000 in reimbursement for a family coverage. And so I had to account for that. And that's one of the big differences. That's about $20,000 that I forgot to include when I went through my proposal. And the select board and the budget committee's number identifies that extra 20 grand, if you will, for that purpose. The other thing that was a part of the big increase was I attempted to try and split the difference and potentially utilize that reserve account we had one opening that we knew about when we were planning in December. And so do you plan on that to be a single coverage? Do you plan it to be a family coverage? The difference is about 20 grand. And I was planning on the more conservative side, but that is, we have to have the reserve balance to be able to pick up if we hire someone who had the higher plan option. And so those were the two big differences. The other one had to do with overtime. We had anticipated someone to have to go through the academy, and with that comes we're down a position while they're there, and we presume that the community wants that position while they're gone to be backfilled so that there's someone on duty and serving the community. I had raised the question as to whether or not we did do that backfill coverage. The board felt comfortable, more comfortable having a budget to allow that. And so that was another big difference between mine and what is in front of you as a recommendation. There's a quick overview of some of these numbers. Big changes in the budget from last year to this year based on the select board's recommendation. So it kind of summarizes the bigger changes here. Is there any other questions?
We also earlier on decided not to renew the contract for parking enforcement, and so we took the revenues out for that and the expenses.
Matt, does that answer your question? Yes, sir.
Is there a reason why the police budget isn't broken out in the same way that the other departments are? Seems like that'd be useful to do going forward. General government is broken out, the police department isn't, public safety is, and public works.
Was there a reason why that was chosen? Anybody on the board?
For the warrant, yeah, I mean, I think for the layout, like in the budget process, which is available it'd be hard to put it on the warrant to have all the departments broken down, so the budget actually, be more than welcome to look at the budget book, and it's available on the website throughout the year as it goes on, but it breaks down.
Yeah, but even in the agenda, I mean, it's not broken out in the same way that the other departments.
So if I
Go ahead.
So I don't know how many years ago it was, I believe this was included in public safety, so it would have been in the next article, but it was pulled out to be its own article to be decided on. And none of these in front of you are broken out by line item. They're all summarized, right? So the general government includes multiple departments. The police department is the only department within the police department, so it's presenting it as by itself. The public safety includes, again, multiple departments.
It just seems like there could be more categorization on the agenda.
Well, what he's saying is, you look at the fire department, there's only one number. There are a lot of sub-numbers in the fire department, just as there are in police, but we didn't break them out in all these subcategories.
Any additional discussion? Yes.
In the description of the police, you keep mentioning that the level of police staffing reflects the level of coverage that our community expects. How is that determined? I mean, how do you know what the community expects? I think the community would like a little bit lower taxes. It's a huge police department for a very small community.
Yeah, can I speak to that? Yeah. Jenny, it's a good question. I think if you're looking at, public safety is a hard thing to, I think we all want public safety, fire department, ambulance, and police. So, as far as like the board, as we look at it as a whole, we have to look at a little bit of historical context. I know quite a few years ago it was brought up with I don't know if it was a referendum or there was a ballot initiative or something to see if, Damariscotta still wanted it. And it was, the positive, I mean, it was definitely, in the positive. So we're still basically building off of that, as far as the input that we get from the general public is that they support a police department, a community police department, so.
I mean, that was whether we should have a police department or not. I mean, but there's somewhere in between, I'm saying.
There might be, I don't know what that would look like. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to unpack there, yeah.
Yeah, in general, it's a matter of coverage and how much coverage the police department provides the town, and as relates to the number of calls they get, as relates to the amount of crime. And we've got a very low crime city or town, and we have very good response rate. And I don't know if the chief wants to say anything, but there's a balance between all those things.
At this point here, we're referencing the amount of 907. Any additional questions on that? We'll go over here first. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just curious why we're eliminating the parking enforcement. That was my person. Yeah. I mean, you guys try to park back there and stuff? What?
Make revenue from it?
I'll let the chief speak to it. I'll speak to it. It's, parking enforcement is really tricky. So, and we should, the term parking enforcement is tricky because it's really not an enforcement. The chief will refer to it as a parking ambassador. The 3 hour, it's a known secret that it's very difficult to, you can't mark cars, you can't do certain things. So it was an educational process with keeping people, the vehicles moving like downtown. Without some very expensive equipment to be able to monitor parking times, which are way more than the parking enforcement, the parking enforcement budget was, you have to invest in some very expensive equipment. So at this point, with looking at trying to save some money somewhere, it's a small amount we could pull out of that budget for right now.
In short, we're paying more than we're returning.
That you're gonna lose now because you're not gonna have. I don't know.
Andy's got it in, it's right in the book here, it's minimal.
So the last few years in 2022, our actual collected parking fines revenue was $3,500 and $3,575. 2023, $7,025, and 24, $4,630. We were spending upwards of $15,000 a year to have someone walk upwards of 10 miles a day to help be a parking ambassador for downtown. And so when we looked at that cost over the, we don't do that to make money, but when you look at it as a way to cover its cost, it wasn't even doing that. And so looking through the budget and the board, looking through trying to figure out where some of those changes could occur, and it's a hard position to fill at times. And so that was a spot there that it wasn't covering its cost through the fines, and the enforcement, as Darrell mentioned, with keeping track of the times, has become increasingly challenging with court rulings. So.
Any other questions on the 907,000? Yes, ma'am.
So, I'm all for public safety, but what few arrests they make, the district attorney dismisses everything. And what really upsets me is the 6,000 property checks they do. Why? Why aren't these people having caretakers?
I think it's part of community policing. It's really what people want, it depends on the level of you want, but community policing is part of that, knowing that their folks are out there and checking. They do property checks for a lot of different reasons. It's not necessarily a caretaker, but the police, they check on elderly, they check on folks. So a lot of those property checks are just making sure everybody's.
$1 million is worth that?
Well, that's what we're.
No, that's not, $1 million is for everything they.
Yes, your question.
Can we make a statement and not a question?
No.
Then I'm gonna shut up.
We're dealing specifically with each article as we get there.
Okay, so no statements, just questions.
That's correct. The time for statements and for discussions such as we had earlier, you should go to select board meetings. That's the proper time to handle this.
Just a question.
Yep.
That would be my question.
Yes, sir.
The budget committee has public meetings too. People can come to that over the course of the year.
Absolutely. And these are all on LCTV, I believe. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor of the article as motion? Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion passes at $907,000. Article 16, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate for public safety. The Select Board and the Budget Committee both recommend $534,305. Motion, please. Motion, second?
Yes.
Seconded? Discussion? Amy?
Why are the hydrants $70,000 more than last year? Do we have more of them?
If I could just jump in on here for a second, I asked that the first time I was elected to the Select Board.
Okay.
And it is state mandated, we don't have any choice about it.
PUC, that's state mandated.
We have no choice.
Crank it up and say.
The state does it.
I'm happy to address that.
But yes, Andy, we'll go into further. But I share your frustration, and there isn't a damn thing we can do about it. Andy?
So as you might know, utilities are regulated by the PUC. The Water and Sanitary District is part of that regulatory process. So the fees are up, not because the PUC said they must be, but because the district says their costs and their revenue, they need to raise the rates. It's been quite a while since the water rates have been increased. The PUC does have guidance and rules on what amount of revenue must be generated from hydrant fees, period, based as a certain percentage of their cost. And unfortunately, it presents itself in a $70,000 cost to us that is shared between us and Newcastle, as they have hydrants as well. I believe the count was about 75% of the hydrants are in Damariscotta, so that gets split in about that ratio between the two towns. I think the increase was, I believe, and we're seeing what they planned for. They work on a calendar year, and we're unfortunately having to absorb some of that in the current fiscal year's budget because we didn't anticipate that large of an increase. And then this budget you're considering actually is what they have is 2 fiscal years of an increase. The rates went up in January 1 of 25, and the second step goes January 1 of 26. So we're trying to account for both years of increases in one tax year.
Okay, thank you.
So I believe it was a 40% increase on the rates to the hydrant users in that two-step process overall.
It's gonna go up.
Additional questions? Hearing none, all in favor of Article 15, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate for public safety, $534,305 is the figure before us. In favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Article 17, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate for public works. The Select Board and the Budget Committee both recommend $882,070. Motion, please. Moved, second. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor of appropriating for public works, $882,070. I'm sorry?
Question on that, Jim.
You did?
I did.
I'm sorry, I didn't see
Is
it.
that, highway department, is that including the snow plowing contract in that, Andy?
It does.
Where's the bottom line? The bottom.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Article 18, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate for community services betterment. The Select Board recommends $2,500. The Budget Committee recommends $0. May I have a motion with a dollar figure, please?
Could you define it first?
Could somebody in the Select Board define that?
Yeah, so it's flowers and fireworks. Mostly fireworks.
Do we have a motion?
Move 0.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Alternative motion? You want to wait till this one's
You
active?
gotta vote.
You could vote to amend, you could make a motion to amend the.
I'll make a motion to amend that we go with the select board's recommendation of 2,500.
Is there a second to the motion to amend? Okay, the motion to amend has been made and seconded. We'll now have a vote on whether you want to allow the motion to
Jim,
amend.
there's
Yes,
already a motion on the floor.
we've
You have
amended.
to handle that motion before you do a amendment.
No, you can amend the motion.
What's that?
You can amend the motion.
He's already moved zero and zero has been seconded. Then you have to vote on that motion and then somebody can make a,
Yeah, they're two different motions.
okay.
Take a break.
If it's mo-
Okay, reading from the main moderator's manual, which is what we're running this meeting by. A motion to amend is a subsidiary motion and must be disposed of before the main motion is voted on.
Perfect. Thank you.
So we're now voting on whether you want to allow the motion to amend. All in favor of the motion to, and then
Was it seconded?
Do we?
it was seconded.
Okay.
This is just to amend. This is
In favor.
opposed. All right, we're gonna have to ask for a count.
Yeah.
In favor of the motion to amend,
Hold them up for, what happened? You, is yours up? Okay.
opposed to the motion to amend.
You got two behind you.
Yeah, I'll get there.
How many did you get?
Nope, thank you. 26
26 for,
for the amendment, 16 against.
okay. Now the motion is amended. Now we'll have discussion. We did not just pass that motion, now we've amended the motion, and now we'll discuss it. Yes,
Can I speak in favor of my?
please do, or please speak.
Oh, okay. The 2,500 is a fraction of what the fireworks cost. I would guess, based on fireworks expenditures I've been involved with, that's probably a tenth of the cost. The only thing it does is it makes sure that the town is designated as the owner, so our liability coverage will cover the expense. But that is a fraction of the cost.
Thank you for that comment from the former town manager. Any further discussion? Yes,
Where is that actual money coming from to pay for the fireworks? If it's $250,000, am I doing that right?
No.
$25,000?
2,500.
Well, that's what
No.
we're voting on, but that was.
22.5 if you do the math.
Matt, go ahead.
Chris Roberts goes door to door downtown and gets donations for the fireworks.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
If we merely need an amount for the town to be liable, why does it have to be $2,500?
That was the motion that was put before this body.
But why did the select board propose that if it's merely a process for being liable? Why couldn't it be $500?
Would the select chair like to?
Yeah, it's been a historical amount. That amount really hasn't changed in many years, so if, how many?
22.
Yeah, like 22 years, so it's, thank you, Cheryl. So it's a very small amount, so it's just been that amount, because as Mr. Lucas spoke to, the vast majority of it comes out of private donation, with the Roberts family going door to door and getting donations. So it's a very small amount, and it's just been that amount. You know, if you adjusted it for inflation, it would be going up and up and up, and be much more than that. So it's a very small amount. Yeah.
Additional discussion? Yes.
I just want to point out that the Budget Committee, in the process, ending up in recommending 0, was never advised that there was any kind of a liability issue or background reasoning for the $2,500.
Even in prior years? Even in prior years, since we've been doing it for a long time?
Andy, would you like to address that?
I'm not prepared to give an answer that would be satisfactory. I'd have to look into that and ask our insurance company. I'm not aware of it covering the liability for someone else's operation, but I'd have to find out from our insurance company for sure.
It's just our donation to
Right.
the fireworks fund.
That's my
so they
understanding.
can inform, it doesn't cover our insurance.
Right.
Well, wait a minute, then that's not what Matt said.
That doesn't go to our insurance. We have to insure, we have to get a certificate of liability insurance for, I think it's Mr. Hers that holds the fireworks out in his property.
Okay, so it is for liability, okay.
Yep, but that's not what we pay for I mean, that $2,500 is literally just to contribute to have fireworks in town of Damariscotta.
It's the town's contribution to it.
Yep, we give that to Chris Roberts, it goes, that's it.
Further discussion?
I have a question
Yes.
about the liability. Cheryl, so is the liability paid out of a different account then?
Nope, it's just part of our insurance, it's just part of our property and casualty insurance.
We just have a rider we have a rider for fireworks.
It's a one-day rider, and that's it.
Right. So this would not preclude us from paying that?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Further discussion? Hearing none. We are now voting on the amended, which is for an amount of $2,500. All in favor? Opposed? Please hold those up. The ayes have it.
Yeah.
All right, Article 18 passes, $2,500. Article 19, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate for debt service. Bond issue for road and sidewalk improvements, $191,130, matures on 10/36. Loan for streetlight purchase and LED conversions, $10,845, matures on 10/25. The Select Board and the Budget Committee both recommend $201,975,000. Motion, please. Moved, second, discussion. Yes,
Sidewalks are you planning on rebuilding, Andy?
Excuse me?
What sidewalks are you planning on rebuilding, brother?
I think this is for debt service on previous, this
Yeah,
is
this
not
is-
for future work. Am I correct on that?
Existing debt
Yes,
service.
this is existing,
that's already
these
been
are,
borrowed.
these are bonds turning over.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion for $201,975,000? Opposed? The motion carries. Article 20, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate to the Municipal Building Reserve. Select Board and Budget Committee both recommend $40,000. A motion, please.
So moved.
Move, second. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor of, see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate to the municipal building of $40,000. Opposed? Motion carries. Article 21, see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate to the Fire Station Reserve. Select Board and Budget Committee both recommend $60,000. A motion with a dollar figure, please.
So moved.
Dollar figure, please.
60,000.
Oh, $60,000?
Second at $60,000? Second. Discussion. We need to get a dollar figure into all these open numbers.
You waiting for a second? Second.
No, we have a second. We're waiting for discussion. Hearing none? All in favor of appropriating $60,000 for Fire Station Reserve? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 22, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate to the Highway Facilities Reserve. Select Board and Budget Committee both recommend $100,000. Motion with a dollar figure, please.
I move $100,000 for that reserve.
Motion, second. Discussion. All in favor of appropriating $100,000 for Highway Facilities Reserve? Opposed? The motion passes. Article 23, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate to the Fire Truck Reserve. Select Board and Budget Committee both recommend $150,000. A motion with a dollar figure, please.
So moved for the $150,000.
Second. Second. Motion and second. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor of appropriating $150,000 for the Fire Truck Reserve? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 24, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate to the Fire Equipment Reserve. Select Board and Budget Committee both recommend $6,000. A motion, please.
So moved, $6,000. Second?
Second. Motion and second. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 25, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate to the Police Department Reserve. Select Board and Budget Committee both recommend $40,000. Motion, please.
So moved with $40,000.
Second.
Second. Motion second. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 26, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate to the Highway Truck Reserve. Select Board and Budget Committee both recommend $35,000. A motion, please.
So moved with $35,000.
Second? Second? Discussion? Larry?
You got $817,000 in your highway department, and you want another $35,000 for a truck, is that correct?
To go towards the reserve, which is for the purpose of the truck's replacement, yep.
This one's operating expenses, and then this is the reserve, capital
Right.
reserve.
We're trying to plan
future.
ahead for the future replacement of items we either bought or built, and in this case, every truck, as we know, has to be replaced at some point. And here, we're estimating in 2029, we'd replace that dump truck we have now. The possibility.
Is this the plan to do $35,000 each year between now and 2029?
Just give me one
That's
second.
correct, that's a heck of a truck.
We have a capital plan, he's gonna look it up.
You also see on this, on the slide up here on the screen, that the possibility of a second truck, which factors into what we're trying to raise.
What's the need for a second truck?
Last year, we ran into an issue where our truck was out of service for a month. We had nothing to use. We ended up renting a U-Haul pickup truck, which sufficed, but we had no dump capabilities. We did try and rent a dump truck. So this is a conversation the select board would have in terms of the capital improvement plan, which was available and is available online for anyone interested in seeing that full plan. Last year I presented to them, I believe, a $23 million 10-year capital outlay as far as I could estimate it. And that's without having bids back. I mean, there's 10 years out, there's a lot of projects, a lot of costs that are unknown. And so we're trying to get more out to folks. And this is just what I suggested we consider doing based on the challenges we face when we've got only one truck to use at times. That assumes the price of a new one, it assumes we would buy it, but again, the select board would move forward with making decisions on capital purchases, assuming the funds are available. And of course, all of this could change dramatically depending on how the select board of the two towns move forward with reviewing public works operations.
Further discussion? Hearing none, we're voting on the motion to raise $35,000 for Highway Truck Reserve. All in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it, the motion passes. Article 27, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate to the Highway Equipment Reserve. The Select Board and the Budget Committee both recommend $30,000. A motion with a dollar figure, please.
So moved with the $30,000.
$20,000.
Second, motion and second, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of $30,000 for the Highway Equipment Reserve? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 28, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate to the Sidewalk Reserve. Select Board and Budget Committee both recommend $70,000. Motion, please.
With $70,000.
I second.
Second, motion and second, discussion. Hearing none. All in favor of appropriating $70,000 for Sidewalk Reserve? Opposed? The motion passes. Article 29, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate to the Paving, Drainage, and Maintenance Reserve. Select Board and Budget Committee both recommend $150,000. Motion, please.
Make a motion for $150,000 for the paving, drainage, and maintenance reserve.
Second? Second, motion and second, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of $150,000 for paving, drainage, and maintenance reserve? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 30, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate to the cemetery reserve. Select Board and Budget Committee both recommend $20,000. Motion, please.
I'll motion $20,000 for the cemetery reserve.
Thank you, Pat. Second? Second. Discussion. All in favor of $20,000 for cemetery reserve? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 31, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate to the property reevaluation reserve. Select Board and Budget Committee both recommend $30,000. Motion, please.
Motion 30,000.
Second? Second, thank you. Discussion.
Why do we need to raise it 15,000?
The town put out to bid services for revaluation this past year. The bid came back at $235,000 to complete the reval. The reval would be completed, that was one of two bids. The other one was for, I believe, $270,000. That would be completed, I believe, for the tax year effective July 1, 2027 is the goal, so fiscal year 28. So it takes about 2 years plus to go through that process. They're supposed to be starting this summer. And so that'll start with some field work, there'll be outreach, we'll work on communicating to the community, kind of those next steps and what to expect from folks that might be visiting the property. It's been since 2005, I believe, since the town had a revaluation, so as you can imagine, you probably own property, all own property, and see what the values might be worth today, and or have seen what your neighbor's houses might have sold for. There's a big gap between market value right now and the assessed value. The projection for the state's 26 tax year shows a $300 million gap between what we value ourselves at locally and what the state suggests we should be valuing ourselves at. By law, you can't go less than 70% of that, and you can't go higher than 110% of that state number. This year, if we don't make an adjustment, we will be lower than 70%. So we have not been keeping up with changing our values ourselves. So some towns might do quarter reviews, so you don't face the every 10 or 12 or 15 years all big priced. You can kind of stagger that throughout and have a more level budget, but because of where we're at, we need to kind of do it all at once. So this will get us closer to affording that when that bill comes due. We do have a balance currently of about $150,000. This would get us a little bit closer. The remaining 2 years we would have to pay that. We'd have to make up that difference.
Any additional questions? All in favor of $30,000 for property reevaluation reserve? Opposed? The ayes have it, the motion passes. Article 32, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate to the payroll liability reserve. Select Board and Budget Committee both recommend $20,000. Motion, please.
Move Article 32 with the recommended amount.
Second. Second. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor of $20,000 for payroll liability reserve? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 33, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $666,755 for the Lincoln County tax assessment. This is a closed article. This states the number in here, so you can make a motion just on this article.
Move $666,000.
You don't have to,
I don't, okay.
Yep.
As written, move Article 33.
Second. Thank you. Discussion.
Well, same question.
It's not discretionary.
It's not.
Any additional questions?
I could aim it to try and maybe answer what I think you were trying to ask. The county has its own budgeting process. If you're not familiar, county taxes are appropriated to the towns based on the state valuation. So, and that's the way that the law is written to try and create equitable shares in that. There's perhaps challenges or issues within accepting that as the equitable share. But I tried to put on here, there's two different axes here just showing, but the trend line is about the same when you look at the average, the county totals and what the increase is year over year. We're right on par with the average. There's 20 towns in the county and we're at, I think, 10 of 20 in terms of the average annual increase year over year for the last 15 years. Other towns have seen dramatically higher changes when their valuations based on the state data is going up. I believe Bristol, South Bristol, Booth Bay are among the leading towns, far higher than, what are we at? Over the last 3 years, our value's gone up 40%. Over the last 5 years, 54%. And over that 15-year average, we're seeing about a $15 million increase in our valuation. And that's, again, the average in the county. So seeing some of those other towns' prices and their valuations from the county increase year over year is pretty dramatic. Ours is not small, but you know, we're trending with where the county averages are seeing, but we still have a big gap. But they do have a process they go through. We do have the right to elect someone to represent us at their caucus. We missed that this year, but hopefully next year we'll get that out in appropriate timing and see if someone wants to work on behalf of this town to represent at the county budget process.
Any additional questions on that? Voting on the Lincoln County tax assessment of $666,755. All in favor? Opposed? The motion passes. Article 34, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $747,130 from estimated revenues to be applied to reduce the fiscal year 2026 tax commitment. It's up here on the board. The Select Board and the Budget Committee both recommend that figure of $747,130. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved, and $747,000 and 130.
Second, please. Motion and seconded, discussion. Hearing none. All in favor of $747,130 from estimated revenues to be applied to reduce the fiscal year 2026 tax commitment? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 35, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $24,500 or any amount as received from the State of Maine Local Road Assistance Program to reduce the fiscal year 2026 tax commitment. Could I please have a motion stating it that way or with a different figure if you so wish?
Move Article
35
as written.
Second. Motioned and seconded at $24,500 or any amount as received from the state. All in favor? Discussion.
Discussion. Good question.
Yes.
Are you saying that, if I understand this correctly, $24,500 coming from the state for roads? Instead of putting that into your highway road thing, you want to take it and reduce your tax deal? Is that what you're saying?
That's how the town has handled it for, the last, I don't know how many years it's been, but yes, that money has to go towards either a future capital project or capital projects for that year.
But in this case, you want to take it and reduce the tax bill?
This is a reduction on the tax commitment, yep.
Additional questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 36, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $150,000 from the undesignated fund balance to be applied to reduce fiscal year 2026 tax commitment. Select Board and Budget Committee both recommend $150,000. A motion, please, with a figure.
Move Article
36.
I'm gonna get my glasses out, with $150,000.
Second. Motion second. Discussion.
How much is in that fund?
I have an estimate up here on the screen.
Oh, sorry.
The FY '23 audits wrapped up finally, and they note $2.3 million in the fund balance as of the end of that fiscal year. All we can provide is an estimate for FY '24 as that process is just starting, but I'm estimating that very rough estimate at $2.9 million. The auditors, correct me if I'm wrong from what the board or Cheryl, what you know, but the auditors have a few different recommendations. The one that we've been following is to have 3 months of your operating expenses in the fund balance. So when we know that we're paying a school a certain amount of money each month, and the county tax bill comes due in that first 3 months of your fiscal year, that leaves us with, in that first 3 months, $950,000 to cover town expenses, $1 million, almost $1.1 million to cover the school payments for next year in those first 3 months, and $666,000 to cover the county tax. So that totals almost $2.7 million for the first 3 months. And so it puts us pretty darn close to what the target is, based on what we're estimating for the FY '24.
So I guess there's no reserve to actually,
Until the audits get caught up, I would not recommend going too far into that.
Got it.
John, did you have a question? Same question. Further questions? All in favor of $150,000 from the undesignated fund balance to be applied to reduce the fiscal year 2026 tax commitment? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 37, and on this one we'll need a motion with the name to elect one cemetery trustee for a 3-year term. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we appoint Richard McLean and Sherry Sage.
We're on the cemetery one.
Oh, I'm sorry, cemetery.
They can be on that too.
All right, there's a lot of people in town that aren't here tonight. I think we could vote one of them in.
What is it? Where's Patty?
Hearing no.
The motion for the second. I don't know, Mr. Moderator. I'm not stepping on that
I have
one.
a recommendation.
Someone will come forward that selectmen, I'm sure there's a process for the selectmen to take care of it at some point.
This position's gonna be filled, yeah.
Martha and I will carry on.
We'd like to have some.
You don't want to do it, Dick. You don't want to do it?
You don't want to be in trouble.
No, I don't deserve it.
All right, hearing no motion, that article fails for lack of a motion.
Like an emotion.
Article 38, to elect the following budget committees for the terms listed below. Richard McLean for a term ending in 2028, Sherry Sage for a term ending in 2028. Are there any further nominations? I would need a nomination and a second.
I make a nomination.
Well, to fill in the blanks. And then we'll nominate the whole article. Any further nominations? You see the blank? Well, you don't see, you see the blank.
The budget committee, they're looking around.
Dick?
May I make an observation?
You may?
Have been the chairman of the budget committee for a few years. I just want to observe that it is not an elite group, okay?
Dick, you gotta sell this. Come on.
A number of people here voiced some concern about some of the proposals, the funds, how we get there. and what they represent. Being on the budget committee is an opportunity not only to have some effect on that, but to really get to understand and contribute to the why and how we get to those numbers.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to nominate themselves? Hearing
Try
none.
again to
And
get
you
the
may
answer.
talk to the selectmen at another time, I'm sure they'd be interested. If anyone has an interest, please do contact the selectmen. At this point here, I'll
I
ask
will
for,
make a motion that we reappoint Richard McLean and Sherry Sage to the positions. Richard McLean until June 28th and Sherry Sage also to June 28th.
second. Motion and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? They are nominated and elected. Article 39, to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to spend funds from various reserve funds as they deem necessary in accordance with the capital improvement program. Could I have a motion, please?
So move as written.
Second. Motion and second. Discussion. Yes.
Is there a maximum amount of money that would be discussed or be approved without?
Not in this article. Larry?
I think we need to be careful about this one, because if there's no set amount of money, then the selectmen could go have a highway bill without any. I mean, we had Keen Woods hot copy paved, and that never even went out to contract. So, I mean, I think we need to be careful of what we do here.
I'm gonna get to you next, but first, Andy seems to want to respond to that, in which case you, depending on what you hear, you may want to motion an amendment.
Well, that's not to Larry specifically. Both questions were similar. Is there a cap? Yes, there's a cap.
What is it?
You let me, Larry.
Okay.
You all just went through and voted on reserve appropriations for multiple reserve accounts. The board cannot spend more than what's in a reserve account. So that is their limit. They work through that budget process to look at a work plan. Some of those items were identified on those screenshots you saw for some of those articles. So if anyone is interested in learning more about the capital improvement plan that they're working on, it is available online. It is discussed in lengths throughout the budget process. If anyone, as you saw, there are openings on that, please join. It's not a small amount of money that needs to be spent to keep this town going in the long term. Everything we build by or has wheels or is built on the ground, it has to be replaced or fixed at some point. And they're trying to balance that with responsible budgeting. And trying to avoid paying interest on that means we try and fund that proactively. So it's a big document, and there's a lot of projects in there. Encourage you all to look at that.
But Andy, I think you can also talk about why we chose to do what we did with Keen Woods, because we had an opportunity.
Well, that's not.
We're not gonna address that at
we
this
can't do
point.
that right
That's not covered in this article.
Yeah. But to Andy, to speak to the Chair, I'll speak to Andy's point. Yeah, the capital, each one we've already voted on, they have a cap, they have an amount, and they're directed towards certain projects. So it's not an open piggy bank where you can move money from here to there. It has to be, those amounts are appropriated for those particular capital projects. And this Article 39 just allows the select board to use the money in those capital amounts for those projects that they're appropriated for. There's not a lot of wiggle room for the select board to do anything, to do their own projects and, whatever they want to have done. It's not a, it's not a free-for-all, believe me.
We have a question up the back.
If this were voted down, how are the reserve funds moved?
Good question.
Every time we'd have to spend a reserve, money from the reserve, we'd have to come to the voters for approval. And have not an annual town meeting, but it'd have to be special town meetings throughout the year, depending on when we need to access those funds for projects or payments.
Yes.
You elect a select board, and you have a budget committee, and you have professionals running the town, and I think we need to trust them.
Further discussion? Yes.
Quick question on, so how are those capital funds invested?
They are in a checking account.
no interest or you can't?
Non-interest bearing?
Yeah, it's not something you're going to invest those types of money. By state law, there's certain ways we can invest our funds. Public money is raised through taxation. It's not something you want to play on the market. Trust funds that have been provided to the town through bequests or things like that do have an opportunity to be invested in kind of a lower risk return options. So we have a mix of those, but all of our reserve balances are with a checking account.
But we do go out to bid to banks.
Further discussion? All right, voting to authorize the select board to spend funds from various reserve funds as they deem necessary in accordance with the capital improvement program. All in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Article 40, to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to accept gifts of money, bequests, apply for and accept state and federal grants, and grants from nonprofit organizations on behalf of the town for municipal purposes, including when necessary, the authority to authorize the signing of grant contracts, accept the conditions that accompany gifts of money, bequests, and grant funds, and to appropriate and expend gifts of money, bequests, and grant funds for authorized purposes. Motion to allow the town to accept money.
So moved.
Motion seconded, discussion. Yes?
Does this include cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, or just US dollars as gifts?
Andy?
We haven't run into that.
I think as I read the question, it's money.
I don't think we could accept it.
If someone is interested in considering that type of donation, we will happily ask our auditors and financial advisors.
Good job, Andy.
Cross that bridge.
Any other questions? All in favor of the article? All opposed? Article passes. Article 41, to see if the town will vote to accept from the Massasoit Engine Company gifts of money and certain items of equipment to be used for the benefit of the town and the Massasoit Engine Company. A motion, please.
So moved.
Second. Second. Question? Hearing none. All in favor of the town accepting gifts from the Massasoit Engine Company? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 42, to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to enter multi-year contracts not to exceed 10 years for the lease or purchase of goods and services and the lease of real property or buildings when they deem it in the best financial interest of the town. A motion, please.
So moved.
Second. Motion second. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 43, to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to set the date, hour, and place for the next annual town meeting. Motion.
So moved.
So moved, second. Discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Article 44, to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to dispose of town-owned personal property under such terms and conditions as they deem advisable, and to appropriate the proceeds of any sale of said items to an existing operating or capital reserve account. A motion, please. So moved, second. Second. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 45, to see if the town will vote to reappropriate money from the sale of town-owned vehicles to the respective departmental reserve accounts. A motion, please. Second? Seconded? Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 46, to see if the town will vote to set a date when taxes shall be paid, and if so, what rate of interest shall be charged on taxes unpaid after said date. The maximum allowable rate is 7.5%. The select board recommend due dates of October 1st, 2025 and April 1st, 2026, and an interest rate of 7.5%. A motion, please, and please mention those dates and the interest rate.
I move Article 46 with the select board's recommendations.
Second? Motion second. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 47, to see if the town will vote to authorize the tax collector to offer a 2026 tax club plan to taxpayers who enroll no later than July 30th, 2025, who pay the total amount of 2026 taxes by monthly payments from July 1st, 2025 to April 30th, 2026, who abide by the requirements of said plan, who shall receive from the town in return for such payments full credit for such taxes paid without incurring any charge of interest. To be eligible for the tax club, all 2025 taxes must be paid in full. A motion, please.
So moved.
Second. Motion and second, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 48, to see if the town vote to authorize the tax collector to accept prepayments of taxes not yet committed and to pay interest at a rate of 0% as a courtesy to taxpayers who wish to prepay said or all of their uncommitted taxes. A motion, please.
So moved.
Second. Motion and seconded. Discussion.
Does this ever happen?
Yes, quite often.
I believe if you,
Really?
Yep, sometimes people will get their tax payment or their refund for their personal income taxes,
And
and
they just
they'll
put it
just
right
bring them in
in.
and just say, I just wanna put it on
Okay.
next year, and we can't accept it unless we're
Aha.
authorized to.
Okay.
But if they prepay us, we would technically have to give them interest, that's why we say no interest, 'cause we're not gonna be a bank for you to hold
Okay.
off on it.
Makes sense. Thank you.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 49, to see if the town will vote to set the interest rate at 3.5% to be paid by the town on prepaid abated taxes pursuant to 36 MRSA 506-A. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second. Motion second. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Article 50, to see if the town will vote to authorize the municipal offices to dispose of tax-acquired property via quitclaim deed by either A, offering the property to the former owner, or if deceased, to his, her, theirs, heirs, divorcees, personal representative for a price equal to all outstanding taxes, interest, fees, and costs, or B, using the process authorized by 30 AMRS and 943C, provided that if the former owner does not request that process, or the board is unable to list or sell the property as required by 943C3, the board may sell the property through a competitive sealed bid process in which a notice advertising sale of the property shall be published at least twice in a newspaper of general circulation in the county. For sales other than to the former owner, excess sales proceeds, as defined in 36 MRS 943C, shall be returned to the former owner. A motion, please.
Move Article 50.
There, you gotta say the whole thing. Motion and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Article 51, to see if the town will vote to, 1, approve the purchase of a replacement ladder truck, 2, appropriate a sum not to exceed $1,900,000 plus any additional premium to provide for the cost of the purchase, and 3, authorize the treasurer and town manager to issue general obligation securities of the town, including temporary notes in anticipation thereof, in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $1,300,000 plus any additional premium, and delegate to the treasurer and the town manager the discretion to fix the dates, maturity, denominations, interest rates, places of payment, calls for redemption, premiums, forms, and other details of said securities on behalf of the town, and to provide for the sale thereof. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second. Motion and second. Discussion.
Are we going to sell the previous ladder truck?
Would the fire chief like to answer this question?
I don't want to have my back to people.
Please do.
From down here, if that's okay. Yes, we would sell the ladder truck. Having an idea on what the value is difficult because we put together a kind of a quick one one-sheet summary on things. Right now, it's about 36 months to get a new truck, so we would not be able to sell the old truck until we had the new truck in service, so we're looking at 36 or 40 months from the order being placed before we'd be able to dispose of the truck. So knowing what the condition of it would be in 3 years from now, it's really tough to come up with a value. Right now, trucks in the similar age are going for somewhere in the $300,000 to $350,000 range. So in 3 more years, it could be that, it could be less. If we had a structural failure of the aerial between now and then that would take the value down to scrap. So,
Thank you.
While we have the fire chief up front, do we have any more questions for the chief? Yes,
How
sir.
many fire trucks are there in the Lincoln County area? I mean, ladder trucks like this?
there are 4 ladder trucks, other than Dresden has an old one, I'm not sure if it's still together, that would make 5. Wiscasset has a ladder, Booth Bay Harbor has a 75-foot ladder, and Waldoboro has a 108-foot ladder.
And what's this one here, huh?
It will be at least 100 foot.
At least 100 foot?
Which is what we have, yep.
Question in the second to the last back row there?
This seems like an immense expense for a town of 2,000 people with a pretty narrow commercial tax base. In the same way that the town is beginning discussions with Newcastle about shared public works, wouldn't it behoove us to think long-term about shared capital expenses for the fire department, and perhaps a shared fire department with Newcastle? Their commercial and sort of structures in town are very much like Damariscotta's. We're closer to the Newcastle Fire Department at this location than we are to Damariscotta's, and it seems like this is a cost burden that is really unmanageable for a tiny town. It will only get worse and increase as you attempt to replace other trucks through time. So I'm curious whether the department and the town have thought about other possible merger discussions in order to keep up with costs.
So I can address that a couple different ways. I think of all departments within the county, the only ones that have done any sort of consolidation of services and working together are fire departments. There's no select boards, there's no police departments, there's nothing else that work the same way together as fire departments do. So from a perspective of making purchases that make sense, this is a purchase that makes sense for Damariscotta because we have more structure, critical infrastructure to protect than Newcastle does. They have very few tall buildings other than Rennie's Warehouse and Lincoln Academy. They don't have the same downtown that we have with a close proximity to buildings. They have a few streets that are similar to Elm Street and Church Street. They don't have the hospital. They don't have 3 grocery stores or 3 lumber yards. So there's a lot of different things that we have that they don't. However, what we've done is put together our apparatus replacement plan, and we are building in, not replacing our front pumper for the exact purpose that you allude to, which is to consolidate resources and focus on what's most important for us. And we felt having a ladder truck is incredibly important, and not just for commercial buildings, but chimney fires happen quite often, and they happen in the winter. And when you need to go up on a roof and try to unplug someone's chimney, it's a lot safer to do so from an aerial device than it is trying to throw a roof ladder up on a building. Now, 50 years ago, everyone had Cape or federal buildings, and the distance to the peak was 14, 16 feet. Now everyone's doing truss construction. You've got 24, 28 feet from the edge of the roof to the peak. You can't get a roof ladder long enough to do that. We can't just climb on a roof without being supported by something. So building construction and different other things that are forcing the need to have these. Now, it is a lot more expensive. Pumpers now are over $1 million, custom pumpers are over $1 million. That's not something that we can control. We just can't say we want a lower price because they don't exist. And the manufacturers that are there are building out 3 years. So there's not an incentive where there's an excess ability to produce trucks that's going to drive that price down in the near future. So I don't like the price. I have had pits in my stomach since we started talking about this because it is an abhorrent price to pay. But that's how much they cost. So we talked about 100-footer. Larry mentioned what the length would be. With ladders, especially in the rural setting, it's not a vertical height. We don't have 100-foot buildings. What we do have is residential driveways that we need to park the truck 40 feet away from the house. You need to reach. And that was one thing with Waldeboro's ladder. We set it up with a demonstration with the truck committee, and they have an extra 8 feet of reach. And there's been times when we've done sets where we're not able to reach a building because of that. So we're looking at that. That extra 8 feet doesn't really add anything to the cost. It's just how the truck's set up. So I agree with you on the price. I would say fire departments are doing a much better job of working together to try to adjust some of those things. And so one of the other recommendations we had on our goals during the budget process was to review our mutual aid procedures that haven't been updated, formal mutual aid agreements that haven't been updated since the 80s. And as part of that, we would be looking for some of our surrounding towns, I won't say in here because we haven't had the discussions yet, to commit to having a tanker. So that way, that would be the vehicle that we drop out of our fleet because 35% of the town is covered by hydrants. We would rely on mutual aid to provide tanker shovels because again, for our area and what we have, we feel the ladder truck is a critical tool that we need to maintain. And the schooner fire, I mentioned in the flyer, when you have fires like that in the downtown area, especially on windy days, the embers and stuff that kicked up from those fires, if you can't get an elevated water source to cut down those, the fire is going to spread. It's happened twice in our history, in the 1840s and the 1940s, that have burned many buildings. And we work really closely with Waldeboro. We work really closely with all the fire departments. That extra 10 minutes is not something that you can just get rid of. Even if we tone them out at the same time we are, it takes 10 minutes for a truck to get here from Wiscasset, or it takes 10 minutes for a truck to get here from Waldeboro. And Newcastle's not going to just decide to take on this expenditure when they haven't had one before. So I hope I answered your questions with that. Thanks.
Yes.
So I'm going to kind of talk as the town manager right now as Waldeboro, and I'm going to tell you right now, 10 minutes, you're being generous with that time if we had to respond from Waldeboro. I depend on a fully volunteer fire department in Waldeboro as their town manager. I'm very proud of them. They do an amazing job. My two best responders during the day come from Strong and Hancock, right here in Damariscotta, and Hunt Lumber. So they've got to drive to the fire station in Waldeboro and then come back with our ladder truck. And that's just the way it is because it's a dying breed. And I would echo what John says. If you want to look at something that actually, a service that actually is truly working together, like a true, well, obviously it's mutual aid, but when you want to start talking about sharing services and have that actual discussion, the fire departments do it. And let me tell you how hard it is to start talking about mutual aid or our sharing services. We implemented, because we have an EMS department in Waldeboro, and when we had to go to Jefferson and we had to go to Friendship and actually start talking about truly sharing those services and the burdens of costs and the burdens that we shared because we were bearing costs for mutual aid that became mutual aid. Those are very, and I'm serious, those are very difficult discussions, you know. I sat in a meeting just like this in Jefferson where I was called just about every name in the book. The fire services that we have in Lincoln County do a great job, and I will tell you right now, John Roberts is one of the leaders of that, the group of chiefs between Waldeboro and Noblesboro now, and Damariscotta that actually do really work together. And those conversations about, hey, we don't have a tanker, we need a tanker. We depend on Friendship for a tanker when they come into Waldeboro. They don't have to buy a ladder truck, but they also don't have what we have. So that stuff is happening in the fire service, you just don't see it. So I just wanted to make sure people knew that. So my only other question I had, my only question I had after that was, what wheelbase are you looking at? Are you looking at a wheelbase like we have that can maneuver down your streets, or are you gonna
So,
go longer?
the spec that we were authorized to go out with in case this gets voted through was for a tandem axle, which is what we have.
Okay.
And the turning radius on the tandem axles, talking to manufacturers, was the same as the single axle, because the single axle has to be back further in the truck. So we're going with the tandem because there's a few other advantages, like having the brakes be able to stop you a little better. So you've got a 60-something thousand pound truck, having extra brakes is good. So
Additional questions, comments, thoughts, concerns? Matt?
My back of the envelope calculations here, this is gonna add 109,000 to the annual debt service or thereabouts. So that would be in addition to the 200,000 that we had earlier in debt service.
If I could speak
Andy,
to, do you mean the 150, I believe, we had raised for the fire truck reserve?
No.
Oh, the debt service, sorry. Yeah. One of the things John and I had discussed with the budget process was there was an increase in what we've asked the voters to consider for the truck reserve. And instead of seeing that new debt service payment happen 2 or 3 years from now and have to see that whole increase that year, we're trying to step that increase up in anticipation of what that amount will be in 3 years. I believe we were estimating, depends on the term and all that, but I think we were estimating close to $150,000 as an annual.
I think that's, yeah, it's going to depend on the term. Again, we're anticipating having around $500,000 to use as a down payment and reduce the price of the truck a little bit, somewhere in that neighborhood. And then we would bond the rest on delivery, which again, we're projecting to be about 3 years from now. So we're building up the reserve account because we're going to deplete it with this prepayment. It's also important if we have to rebuild a pump or catastrophic failure needs to be rebuilt on one of the other trucks. So we're trying to build that account back up. And then in the 3-year period, we would then reduce our reserve request by an amount to account for the debt service to try to come out at a level. I think that's what you were trying to say. So we're trying to build up over the next 3 years to come out where this does not provide an increase in cost. In 3 years, it would be something that would come out of another place in the budget.
Yes.
We passed almost $1 million budget for the police to do property checks, but we're arguing about a ladder truck that's actually going to save our lives. I have nothing to do with Damariscotta Fire, but I've lived here my whole life, and I'm a part of another fire department in town, in the adjacent town. But I have to say, I've been to many structure fires in the county, and Damariscotta firemen are the most aggressive. They go in, they put the fire out, and they leave. They don't mess around. They're one of the best in the county. And we passed $1 million budget for property checks, but we can't pass for a ladder truck? Come on, you guys.
In fairness, there was a few more things in there besides property checks, but additional questions?
It wasn't $1 million.
Additional questions? Hearing none, all in favor of Article 51, which I'm not going to read the entire thing. Opposed? Thank you, sir. The article passes. Article 52. To see if the town will vote to raise and/or appropriate the sum of $2,200 for the provider agency Healthy Kids. Motion, please. Second. Motion second, discussion. Julie, and then you, yes.
It has nothing to do with this, but I'm not gonna be able to say it before you adjourn, but I think that, we need to say thank you to the staff that puts together all of this, because so much goes unseen in all of these things. I know Cheryl probably pulls her hair out. I know what goes into this, and I just think you're all amazing.
Totally out of order, but I'll allow it. Yes.
Hello, I'm Charlene Corbett. I'm the Executive Director of Healthy Kids. I owe an apology to all of the residents in Damariscotta. This shouldn't have been part of your warrant. Because of an internal glitch in our office with our new administrator, we missed our deadline for submitting by a business day. We've previously requested $2,200. We have not recently increased our request. And I just want to say that in 2023, the most recent reportable year, Lincoln County had 83 substantiated child abuse cases. But I'm not leaving you on that sad note, because what I want to say is that Damariscotta is the third most active town in our 37 towns to utilize Healthy Kids services, programs, and participate in our events. We've been serving our county for 40 years. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary, and we owe a debt to this town for your generous support. And I apologize for turning in our request late.
Additional discussion. All in favor of $2,200 for Healthy Kids? Opposed? Motion passes. May I please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Opposed? The motion passes. Thank you all very much for your attention, your questions, your interest.
Thank you all for coming. Go.